Nope, it's now recording. It wasn't automatically recording.
Good.
It now is.
Well, welcome everyone. It's good to have you all here. And I'm going to turn this back over to our wonderful moderator, George. George, take it away.
Hey everyone, I am, for anyone that doesn't know, I think everyone now recognise, I'm George, known as George the Medium online, so please accept my thanks for joining us. This is episode 21 of the Warren Files, and we were saying last week, we can't believe already that we have had 20 episodes. We actually love doing this. This brings us so much joy because we get to think of different things and different topics. As always, if there is something that you love, please let us know. As normal, could I ask you all to just maintain, you have yourself on mute until we get to a point where we can do some questions later, just so we can talk about everything we want to speak about. Quickly, I'm going to just mention that we do have Catherine, but she's not here yet. But we do have our lovely Michelle. And Michelle, can you just let everyone know where they can reach you and about this Saturday's show, please?
Yes, they can reach me on Riverside, Iowa Paranormal and the Spirit Realm Network. And this Saturday at 9 Eastern, we are actually going to be filming live from the Haunted Castle House in Brumley, Missouri. Really excited.
And they can get the links for that on the Spirit Realm Network and on the Riverside.
Yes, yes, they can. As soon as they go onto the Spirit Realm Network, we'll be shooting live right from there. And we'll also have it live going through the Riverside, Iowa Paranormal page.
Brilliant, thank you. And also, Chris, you are on Friday.
That's right. We have, as everyone here knows, we have the Warren Files every Friday night. As a matter of fact, as of this week, they are pre-recorded. And me and hopefully my guest each week will be in the chat room answering your questions as the tape plays. I will always be there. This week, I'm lucky enough to have the beautiful and talented Michelle Roos with me. We had an amazing conversation about demonology today, around the world and the history of demonology. And I think you're all going to enjoy it. I know that Kenneth was in on it and listening, and he liked it. So we're going to go with that. So tonight, we are talking about somebody who's actually really important to me, a man named Harry Price, and a place that's very important to my family, Borley Rectory and Borley Church. They are out in, I believe, if I remember correctly, it's Essex. It's been a long time since I was there. It's either Essex or Sussex. I believe it's Essex. And it's removed from the village. It's quite a walk. But it is a beautiful, beautiful place. So let me tell you a little bit about Harry Price, because it's pretty amazing. Harry was, in my mind, the father of modern ghost hunting, of modern psychic research. And like me, he is a skeptic. He's no longer with us. But he was a chemist and an engineer. And when he was 8 years old, he saw a magic show in town, and it fascinated him. So he himself learned sleight of hand, and he got started investigating the paranormal by actually debunking all of the spiritualists and the fake mediums that were out there, especially during World War I. When they were preying on families who were very vulnerable and looking for some kind of connection with their loved ones that they had lost in battle. But in the 1920s, he went to Germany, and he did an investigation with a young boy who was a medium, and he was blown away. He knew this was real. And there he was in his 40s, and he's a complete believer, and he delves in completely. Very enthusiastic. He still used the scientific method as much as he could. He also was a bit of a sensationalist, although he would expose fakes. He himself got caught once or twice faking things. So not so great. Having said that, in 1929, he was first invited to Borley Rectory. This was a house built in the 1860s and owned by a succession of rectors for the church. It had a long history of apparitions, of noises, of smells, of poltergeist phenomena. There was in particular a ghostly nun and a ghostly priest that was often seen around both the house and the church. At first, Harry was not all that impressed. He didn't really think much of it. But he kept being invited back, and by 1937, he was all in. The family had moved out, the house was empty. He rented it for 12 months. He decided that he was going to do a real scientific investigation. And he got more than 36 people to work in shifts for days and nights at a time in the house, keeping records. The rector who had just been there had kept a diary of what was going on. And so we know that there was a lot of activity going on, a lot of poltergeist activity, the faces at the window, the smells, the things falling and flying. There was a lot going on there. And he made his reputation with that household. In 1939, after he had finished his investigation, it was sold to a man who wanted to turn it into a haunted attraction. When that failed to draw a crowd, he burned it down, and it remained derelict. That was in 1939. It remained derelict until 1944, when it was completely razed to the ground. Having said that, my grandparents went there many times, and they always felt a very close connection with Harry. And in around 1980, 81, they went there, and at first they couldn't get in. And then the door was open, and they went into the church. And this coin my grandfather heard a ping, and then this coin dropped from the ceiling right at his feet. I couldn't tell you the exact date of the coin, but it was an older coin. It was a penny from either the 20s or 40s, somewhere around there. And he felt that this was a message from Harry. In 1984, I was with my grandparents in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We were there for a haunted weekend. This was a gathering of investigators. There was Dr. Radu Florescu, a guy named Dr. McNally. They were partners who had discovered the original Dracula's castle. It turns out Radu was actually a descendant of Vlad Tepes, the true Dracula. And I'll tell you, the man looked like a corpse, and his handshake was like a dead fish. It was like, but he was a very, very sweet, cultured, older gentleman, about my age. One night, I came home, and also Dr. Varma, who had arranged this meeting. He was an expert on Hindu demonology, Hindu mythology, and many other things. The man was an extraordinary man. We all loved him very, very much. One night, I came back from dinner with a friend, and I came to the hotel room that I was sharing with my grandparents, and the door was locked. And my grandfather opened it, the light was out, and he said, "Shh, there's a ghost in the room." Okay. So I came in, sat down on the bed, and my grandmother was talking to Harry Price. And Harry was pretty excited. He wanted to be a part of this gathering. The fact that my grandparents already felt this connection with Harry meant the law of attraction drew him to this gathering. And he had asked if he would be allowed to join. Of course, we were overjoyed. And he then went on to say that I would become a very important person in this field and that he was going to be watching over me for the rest of my life. I really didn't believe anything he said about that. But when my son was born 20 years ago, I did tell him we do have a family ghost named Harry, and he's going to be watching over us and protecting us. So you never have to worry, son. Because I did believe that. I did believe that. I've never seen Harry since, never interacted with Harry, but I've been to Borley. I've felt the energy there. I know the spirits are there, and it's pretty impressive. Is there anybody here who's ever been to Borley or has any information on Borley that they'd like to share?
Nope.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we wanted to get into tonight is things that trigger activity in a home, things that set it off. And one of those things is renovations. When you stir up a home for a spirit, they get pissed off. You know, when you're knocking down walls and changing entrances, they get really, really upset. And I'm going to turn this part over to Michelle first so we can talk a little bit about that.
About renovation, huh? Actually,
well,
yes.
And other triggers.
Well, there are other triggers, but a renovation is actually one of the biggest ones. When you start taking off, like we always talk about the energy imprint of what was there prior, you're starting to peel those layers. And that does start, it could actually give some poltergeist type of activity, some just little knocking activity. And then sometimes when you have that, the triggers of, being scared or having some kind of negative thoughts or, even depression will make those actually even rise even bigger. And they can become more than just a little bit of a haunting.
Definitely. There was a famous one with my grandparents. This happened in Newtown, Connecticut, right on the border with Monroe where they lived. And an old man had lived in the house. When the family moved in, they did some renovations, and they got this man, this old, very set in his ways man, got really pissed off and started throwing dishes out and moving tables. He displayed far more energy than a human spirit normally displays, because he was so single-minded about how upset he was about these renovations. As a matter of fact, it was so bad that my grandparents were not able to get rid of him. And the house was sold and turned into a sports place. And, a sports equipment place, selling sneakers and things like that, jerseys. But the activity was so bad at night that they had to close at dusk every single night. Eventually, the place was completely torn down, and it is now a pharmacy, a CVS, on Route 25 in Newtown, if you ever want to go by and check it out. But that's all because these people get upset when you ruin their homes.
Do you know how we speak about spirits that are caught in the loop, and sometimes they don't know they're dead, and do you find that a lot of them, or have you both come across where that is maybe kind of the reasoning behind it, that there's all of this, they're in their loop, living out their life in the way that they think it is, and then they see their home being completely torn apart, so then they start going crazy?
Like
Yeah.
we're intruders, you know,
Yeah.
we would be like an intruder. And, you know, when you're caught in that loop, they're wondering why you're in their home changing their stuff and they're reacting to it.
There was a great movie years ago. The woman who used to be married to Tom Cruise, the Australian woman, very
Oh,
pretty.
Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
Yeah, Nicole Kidman. I
Others.
believe it was called The Visitors or The Others.
Others.
The others.
Yeah, that's a terrific movie. I won't give away the end.
Yeah.
But if you can get to the end, the payoff is wonderful. It really shows it from a very good perspective.
Very, very well done in that sense of, yeah, without giving it away, it's very, very well done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in regards to spirit, to renovations, have you found that these are then, it's difficult to then handle the spirits that do kick off, if you want to call it that, when there is like these things going on? Is that quite a difficult thing to tackle, a spirit that is going kind of crazy with that, as opposed to others?
Well, why don't we ask some of our other researchers, like Karen or Kenneth or Rodrigo, when you're dealing with entrenched human spirit like that, is it easy or is it difficult to get rid of them?
I mean, I haven't had too much experience, but I think honestly, for me, in my opinion, it would probably be a little harder to get rid of a human spirit, um, because they're just kind of set in their own ways and they're stuck there. And for something I learned last week, uh, yeah, I think it is hard to get rid of a human spirit, because at least within a human spirit, whatever your belief system is, when you give it a command, it's gonna listen to that command and that higher power. So it will leave, as opposed to a human spirit's probably gonna be stubborn and kind of stuck in its own ways. And in my opinion, I think maybe it might be a little more of a pain in the butt to deal with it.
Anybody who's ever tried to change somebody's mind, for instance, discuss politics with somebody and try to get them to change their politics, you know how difficult it is to work with people that way. The reality is human beings have free will. They don't lose it when they die. And often they are in even deeper denial when they're dead than when they're alive, because it's a wholly unusual experience for them. And they are not willing to accept it. Yeah, it is a tremendously difficult thing with human spirits. Inhuman spirits are far easier to deal with.
Yeah.
So let's put somebody else on. Would you cut it out? Excuse me. Sorry, my cat. Not my cat. My girlfriend's cat. Bloody hell. Rodrigo or Karen, do you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion?
Yeah, it's really funny. We were talking about body rectory the other day, just within our team. So just completely coincidentally, one of our team is in England now, and they'd actually been around the Borley area, and just last week, completely coincidentally. Going back to what you were saying about dealing with human spirits, I had an experience of getting rid of a human spirit for a family in Auckland. And we'd been called into the house. They'd already had somebody in to do a clearing in the property. And I don't know anything about the person that did it, but they charged a lot of money to do the job, and they wanted dinner provided for them, and they wanted a lift home afterwards as well. So several $100s later, plus dinner, plus transport, all they'd actually done was made the activity in the house even worse. So there was a call to the team that I was in at the time, and they were in a real state. There was quite a few people living in this house. They had the normal tenants of the house, and they had sublet as well. It was a huge property, and so we went to this house, and I did the kind of normal clearing that I would do. I then did a lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram as well, just because it was such a huge house and we couldn't access every single corner of it. So I felt that probably something a bit different had been required. The previous day, there was a young Maori girl who was living in the house. She had actually seen an apparition following her up the stairs, and it really did seem to be targeting her. It was opening her door at night. She had tried blessing the room herself with a karakia, a Maori prayer, and they sprinkle water around as part of that. But it was really just escalating, and so I always had really good success with the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. But this,
which I'm still waiting for you to write up for the book.
You are actually. I'm working on that for you. Haven't forgotten. So anyway, I thought it was all finished. I was packing up, but suddenly got word that something was wrong, and this girl had been kind of taken ill, and she couldn't walk, she couldn't talk. Whatever this thing was, or whatever was left of it after I'd finished, had jumped inside her. And yeah, she had kind of checked out. This thing wasn't trying to communicate. I think it was just hiding. And I had to get rid of it from there, from within her. So yeah, it was the more challenging cleansing that I've ever done. And I've done a lot, but I've never had anything like that happen before.
We also, I saw that Catherine's now with us. I know that Catherine also had personal experience in Greece. And Catherine, if you are still with us, could you share what happened with your renovations?
Yep. It was the house that I was living with the self-manifestation with the mirror that we talked in one of the episodes on the Zoom a couple of weeks ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago, I can't remember. And after the team that I joined afterwards, the paranormal team came in and did the investigation. It apparently aggravated it even more. So I was at the point where it's you or me. It's either me that's going to leave or you are going to leave. So there was a fight between me and the human spirits. So I said, I'm going to go against you, and I'm going to start renovating. So as soon as I started breaking down walls, the hot water boilers would go off and just break, and there will be water everywhere all over the house. There will be mold coming out of the walls for no apparent reason. Nothing wrong with the pipes. Black mold, red mold like blood was pouring through the walls, and green mold. Nothing that I've brought into. There was nothing wrong. Half the house would be without electricity for days, and I would bring electricity in there, and there was nothing wrong with the electricity. And we ended up, the whole family, 7 members, living in half the house, and the other half just being like we wouldn't step foot in it. It was just constantly cold, freezing, and with mold and electricity issues. So I ended up leaving the house. So they won, I left.
You know, and it's funny, you bring up the whole mold appearing and things like that. Again, it's the same thing as that coin that appeared in Borley. Or, you know, in my very first case, a year after I'd been in the house, the woman was in the basement, and she felt a sharp pain in the top of her head. And she pulled out what looked like 2 claws sticking into her head. And she gave them to me, and I brought them to the zoology department at the University of Connecticut. That's where I went to school. And when they tested it, when they examined it, this is pretty wild. It wasn't 2 fangs or claws. It was the first premolar of a 1 to 2 year old domesticated pig that had been broken in half, and the roots were sticking into her head like claws. And that was an aport. That was something that was just appeared in her head. Pretty fantastic, really. But that house honestly had more activity than any other home I've ever been in my life. Nothing in my life, and I've seen a lot, nothing has been like that. But yeah, so the other thing that both Catherine and Karen mentioned is how teams had gone in there, they had stirred things up, and it got worse.
Yeah.
Here's a little secret that I need to share with everybody. When you call in a team, when you call us in, yeah, things often get worse before they get better, because you're dealing with something intelligent and it doesn't want to go. And there's going to be pushback. You have to be prepared for that. I was talking to a young lady this past weekend, and she was wearing her St. Benedict medal, which is a very powerful protection if you believe in it. And it started to burn her skin to the point where it left a red mark on her, because it was trying to intimidate her and make her take off her protection. She turned it into a bracelet instead. Smart girl. She didn't actually get rid of it. You don't want to give in. You have to be prepared. This is spiritual warfare. It doesn't always have to be. Sometimes it's counseling and negotiation. But when you're dealing with something inhuman, very many times you're dealing with warfare. And it means they're going to fight back, because you're taking away their meal ticket, you're taking away their ticket to stay here, and that's not what they want. I did see a lot of comments popping up. Do we have anything we should be talking about, George?
No, just that other people were commenting about the movie, and someone had, Nicole says, we renovated our house and noticed some poltergeist activity. I've had pictures fly off the wall, lights flittering, etc. So it seems like Nicole can speak to the fact that she's had actual experiences in the home that you live in now. Nicole, would that be correct? Yeah, the one she lives in now.
Yes.
Well, myself and Catherine and Michelle and George, I think you might have been involved a little bit on this one. We were working on a case that had originally been well, not originally, but eventually had become an old folks home. And it was very poorly managed, and people were dying. People were being buried inside the house. One woman went missing for days and was found in the cornfield in very bad weather and nearly dead from exposure. Some of these spirits are still in that home, even though it's been through many renovations, and it stirred up an awful lot of activity. That's not why we were called in. It wasn't for those particular spirits, but because of those kind of renovations and because of that kind of history, that's the kind of thing that happens. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a young lady on Friday night, and you can watch the video if you like. It's on our Facebook page. It was a lovely young lady in Ireland. And when they had moved into this home, this rectory, another rectory, they were confronted by a number of human spirits. There was a little girl who had her tongue cut out and had been murdered and possibly buried underneath the kitchen floor. There was another woman, they even know her name, a lady who had been killed. And these apparitions appeared in the home. They did get a medium in who quieted things down with them and helped them to settle with the living humans. But then they started to do renovations. That didn't stir up the human spirits, but it did stir up something else. And they've been having a lot of trouble ever since. We're only at the beginning of this, and we're going to be looking into it far more. But yeah, maybe it's elementals, maybe it's something demonic, but it hasn't been good for the family. There's no way to know if you're in a home that if you do renovations, it's going to cause trouble. There's just no way to know. But if that happens, then you need to find a way to negotiate with the spirit. Let them know that you're being respectful. Let them know that you mean no harm. Far easier said than done. I realize that. But if you can get the right people in there, then it can be done. It can be a negotiation. It can be a counseling session. And that works far better than a confrontation does.
Kenneth.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. I'm actually talking on behalf of Rodrigo because I know, Chris, you asked the question. He says that he would really love to say something, but, he's still having trouble with the English. And since I do speak
His
Spanish.
English is far better than he gives himself credit for.
But what he did say in a private message, it is amazing. The timing is impeccable because his show on Friday is going to be about Borley as well. So, so yeah, and he's just saying that everything that it comes when it comes to the Borley, it's really it's incredible. A lot of activity, but it's a strange coincidence how all of a sudden we're talking about this, and he's going to actually be talking about that on his show Friday night. So
That's great. I wish I understood Spanish well enough to listen in. Rodrigo is in Argentina, and he has a wonderful program. He's also a member of the foundation, and he is terrific at helping families when they're dealing with hauntings. As a matter of fact, we've got another man that just applied in Argentina. And as soon as he's a neuroscientist and a psychologist, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him. And Rodrigo, if it's a good fit, I'm going to be introducing you right away. He's also in Buenos Aires.
Thank you all. Thank you, Chris. Hope you understand me. You can come with me always. So it will be a pleasure.
Great.
I hope you understand me. Sorry.
Of course we understand you. Your English is wonderful. I told you that. So, anybody else?
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to say, just based on what we were speaking about, for anyone that's been watching this now or watching this later on YouTube or on social media, we don't speak about these subjects. We've said this before, to glamorize or kind of make fun of supernatural occurrences, because we live this life, so it becomes so natural to us to speak about these things when people, and you may see us laugh or kind of snigger towards anything. It's nothing disrespectful. It's just purely that this is our life. We're surrounded by all of these supernatural goings on. So it becomes part of our nature to just talk about it plainly, as much as walking the dog or going for a shower, So we never want to glamorize or promote that you go into a house or do anything unless you are completely experienced and you know what you're doing. Don't go into these things alone. Don't summon things. Don't talk to spirits in a home. Don't pull out your camera and start filming and call out to, is anyone there? Because you have no idea what you guys are doing and what kind of doors you may be opening and what dormant energy or entity may be in the home. And then you then pull out your camera to try and catch something online for social media. Because you then you don't want what you see in the movies, because what happens in the movies is nothing to what it's like in real life. Let me guarantee you that. So, and
the reality is, when it's dormant, but you can actually make it manifest. That's a great point. Thank you very much, George. That's really, really important. When you give it so much attention, when you start playing into it, you start feeding it more and more and more, of course it's going to manifest, because it wants that energy. You're dealing with a lost soul very often. And when you start giving that attention, you're helping it to manifest, to help itself. And that may not be good for you. It's like, don't take candy from strangers. You don't know what you're dealing with.
Let me ask this question then to Michelle, Catherine, and yourself, Chris. One piece of advice you could give someone who maybe think they're experiencing something in their home, like things that go bump in the night. To either one of you, Michelle, one piece of advice that you would give someone who's experiencing something paranormal, or they think
I would say don't give it recognition, but keep a journal.
Catherine?
I would say exactly the same. Do not interact with it. Do not play around with it, and always write down what is going on every day in your life in a small journal. Exactly what Michelle said.
Why is the journal important, girls?
Because you every day, every hour of the day, you can write down every occurrence that's happened, like if your keys disappear or a door opens accidentally for no apparent reason, or if there's noise. You can record it and look back at how many times it has happened in a day, in a week, in a month. And that's how you know how much what kind of activity is going on. Is it a poltergeist activity? Is it just trying to get your attention? Is it worse than that? So I don't know if Michelle agrees, Chris agrees with what I'm saying.
I agree with that. But you're not giving it recognition. You're just doing a documentation to see if that is, like you said, what type of haunting it could be, without the actual recognition to make things worse.
Chris, in the last minute, round us off.
I'm gonna make it a little different and change it up. And I'm gonna say, listen, don't keep that journal that way. I agree. Always assume it's natural. Do not give it any attention. But if it's overwhelmingly paranormal, write it down in the journal. Put the journal in the garage somewhere, and only go there to write down that information when it really, really is paranormal. You don't want to give attention. You don't want to do it in the house, but you want to keep track of only the overwhelming stuff. And you're going to find out that most of the time you can explain it away. And that's what you really want to do. You don't want to give it the attention.
We're going to get cut off, guys. Catherine, go quick.
It's just, Mark, you don't give it attention, because I just saw your comment. Mark, you do not interact with it. You give it attention, you feed it. You don't want to feed it. You don't want to feed it with your fear or your anger or your hate, or just interacting with it at all.
You don't want to give a piece of you, because you're giving it pieces of your.
Right.
Don't give it a name.
Quickly, thank you
Never
everyone
name
for
it.
coming. We'll see you next Monday. We'll see you Friday on the Warren Files. We'll see you Monday on Mystical Whispers, and we'll see you on Saturday on a live feed, all on the Spirit Realm Network.
Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in.
God bless you
to the
all.
Warren Files.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Bye.